But when you are part of a company that is distressed, there is a couple of, I would call it, conflicts you have to overcome, right? Your highest asset and the most valuable asset are your people. So how do you find the right balance between the transparency, but without scaring people off?
Welcome, welcome. I'm your host Stefano, and this is When Leaders Talk, a podcast about leadership and most importantly, about leaders. Good leaders, they show their skills, their capabilities, their attributes when things go wrong. When everything is smooth, it's easy, but the moment the sea is not so calm, well, that's why you need someone that knows how to manage the sails and steer the ship to the destination safely. And this is something I've been talking to with Jenny Fuss. She's the CFO for a big mining company, Boart Longyear. And she has been through rough waters. She had to recover from a distressing company to leading to success. And we've been talking a lot about what was needed at the moment, as well as other things about her and what makes her a successful person. She is really an inspiring person, also because she has lived in many countries, not just in Germany, where she's from, but also in China and now in the United States. So transiting from one place and another to another, changing culture completely adds a layer of complexity to being a woman in a mainly job environment. Once again, I'm sure that this episode is going to be inspiring for all of you, and I hope you will enjoy it. And please subscribe to this podcast because we can make it bigger, and we can have other great guests like Jenny in the future, and it's gonna be. We can make it bigger. We can make it bigger. We can have great guests like Jenny in the future. Also, you can follow me on my social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and I hope to see you soon again. And with no further ado, Jenny Fuss. Jenny, what is your definition of leadership, if you have any, you want to share with us?
Yeah, absolutely, Stefano. So my definition of leadership is basically questioning yourself. Do you want to have followers, and how do you create those? And I think that's very important, because there's a lot what leaders do that in my world is much more important how they do that. And I think with that, you will see differences in success, and as well as also, I would say, to a company culture, what you create and how people get to results, because that is at the end what every company is signing up for, creating results. And with that part, leadership is for me much more the how part.
Well, and it's when you mention culture, to create a culture, there are two main elements, basically, two main ingredients, if you want. One is values, and the other one is behavior. So you might have the best value in the world, but if you do not behave coherently with those values, you have a weak culture, and vice versa, of course. It is, so you need to be consistent on what you think is important for you and for your organization. And what are the values that you normally have work on and in life?
Yeah, I think I have my very personal values, and
very personal. Do you want to share them, or is it too personal?
No, I'm happy to share. So I call it always felt, right? Felt with T, actually. So F stands for fairness. That's one of my stands also at the first place because it's the first most important value for me, fairness. And then the E is sometimes I exchange that a little bit, but I think right now it's the value of efficiency. And the L stands for learning. I'm a continuous learner, and I see a lot of value in that, and that's why I hold that very high. And then the T, the first T, right? Felt was T. The first T stands for transparency. I'm a super big fan of that because I strongly believe that you need to create a culture, a behavior where people openly talk about what is going on, have no fear on talking up their mind, their opinion about facts. And then the with T, my second T, is trust.
Yeah, I was gonna bet on that. But yeah, trust. I mean, trust is. But everything that you said actually, it's very important, right? And when we talk about, especially when you talk about transparency, this is something that a lot of people talk about. But I always, in my experience, of course, this is something that is not really much applied because there is. I don't know. There are probably fears for revealing too much or compromising. Well, of course, there are compromising information is a different aspect, but it's also trying to hide. Like as you say, right? When things go wrong and you try to hide it, hoping that no one will find out. But the problem is that they will find out, and the last T, trust, is going to be impacted by that because, being transparent, right? And all those 5 things that you say, they are intertwined in a way. Everything is linked. It's like if one falls, everything else falls.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
and talking about transparency, as I said, it's probably a challenging one. Not that the other one are easy, but this is very challenging. Have you ever felt, have you ever been in a situation where transparency was not really a core value?
Yeah. At different times and different, let's say, shades of gray. And it's sometimes also like the question, I changed very often jobs and stayed a long time with a large corporation, but still when you change divisions, there's a different culture. And so I think my first 10 years, I stayed in I call it always, down to earth environment. People were speaking up their mind, very straightforward. You could call that was also subject to a certain culture. People who know a little bit about Germany, that's the Ruhrgebiet, and people are very straightforward, right? And you could say like, well, you can be transparent and not being as much as that straightforward, and I would agree to that. But it really created that super transparent culture. So when things were really going wrong, people were coming up and would say like, this is happening. We need to talk about that. What are we going to do about that? And so those first 10 years had a tremendous influence to me, right? For me, that was kind of like the bar was set. If I have something, I will go to my next level of management and I will provide in full transparency what's going on, what I'm working on, or we as a team working on, what is going to happen, where I need maybe support, or if I only need to let them know that it is going on, right? And then when you change through an organization and you come into an organization where you have to adapt that then, because let's call it that way. I mean, I would describe it like my new management was not used to it and didn't like it. And maybe I also had to change my communication, right? Because I came with this, I think as my leader, you need to be aware of that because I know, or I assume, at that point, I would say, I assume you have much more broader insight on what is going on in the company than I maybe have one level down. So even though I don't know what you will be doing with this information, but you need to know. And I thought that I was clear in making sure I just need to let you know, or I need your support. But I would say hindsight was probably not as clear, because people did really dislike that. I got the feedback, Jenny, you're always coming with problems. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm not coming with the problems to you to solve them. If I need your support, I should have been very clear about that. If that was not the case, I need to adapt that. And it was interesting, because it was for me a big change. When you're trained 10 years, bring it up, bring it on, girl. And then suddenly you continue doing that. And the feedback is like, oh, you always just come with problems. And all I was, about like informing and creating transparency.
Right, and that's important. It actually showed that you had initiative and you had control over it. It's, as you said, it's transparency, because of course you want to inform your boss about what's going on, and before they find out. And that's it's interesting what they say. It's interesting their reaction. Actually, recently, I recently had a conversation with a guest here in the podcast, Kathy, close guest, and we were talking about not to say, well, bring me the problem and the solution. And I was like, but I have mixed feelings about it, and it's like you. I like when actually people they tell me the problem, but also I understand they already have moved forward to solve the problem itself, or at least they have an idea, and if I can support, I will surely support. But it's an interesting concept. Talking about problems, let's go. One of the things I know about you is that you found yourself in a company with a lot of problems, and the company was kind of in distress. We don't have to mention, of course, the company, and the privacy has to be protected. We are Europeans. We know very well.
Yeah.
Well, but let me ask you, however, if you can describe the situation, and most importantly, how did you manage to get out of this difficult situation?
Yeah, it is many, many years ago already that I think there were definitely a lot of deep learnings for me. But when you are part of a company that is distressed, there is a couple of, I would call it, conflicts you have to overcome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your highest asset and the most valuable asset are your people. So how do you find the right balance between the transparency, but without scaring people off? Because when you are distressed, right, there's the cost-cutting action, don't spend, doing probably not only one reorganization, because you do the first one and then you may figure out that was not enough, and then you have to go another time, but you still want to ensure that you have the most valuable asset going with you, following you. And I would always say that that's almost the biggest challenge in that. Yes, changing company structure, focusing on cash, and driving initiatives is not a walk in the park. That hindsight, I would say, I had a lot of learnings about, I think I was at that point in time very good in describing what to do, but I definitely had to learn how to do that. And then you have to put that also in context. I think I would have done a little bit better if it would have happened in my own culture, but I was doing all of that in a new country, right? In a new culture. Mm-hmm. And there's also a different way on how you connect with your employees, how you build relationship with customers, with suppliers. And so I would say there was a lot for me in that. It was very stressful for me personally in terms of what I had to handle. And like always, when you have a very stressful situation, professionally, you will grow the most. and I'm very grateful for that. That it really comes to, because you need the right people with you to tackle all those projects, right? Going out asking for additional capital will always also require that you have a solid story to tell. So if you team up, for example, with your head of commercial, and he may not understand why this is important talking to lenders or to another, owner, they may screw it up without knowing it. And so just to create that everyone is aligned and connected in the leadership team, but then also really important, the communication inside, but also outside. And yeah, really great experience. I wouldn't say I have mastered it yet. But there's always, when you're in those situations, that you will continue to learn. And I find excitement in that. Most of that for me starts always with communication and connecting the dots and bringing then the people together. Because if you, at the end, I would say you really need a team to get through that. It's not one person. It's not only the CEO or CFO. You really need the team to lift that.
Well, thank you for sharing this story and all the lesson learned that you've taken away. And talking about lesson learned, let me ask you, what is that you have learned about yourself in this situation? Something that you have discovered that you didn't know you had or you were?
Yeah, I think, I mean, first of all, imagine a couple of years back, I was kind of like at the point of my 30s, and that's where you typically still need to grow a lot. And so I did as well. And I think it started really also with that component of self-awareness and the way of how you are communicating, how it is perceived, learning to take others people's perspective, right? And not coming into the room and saying, this is how we have to do this, because I think there's something in me, I'm very, very result driven, focused to the specific goal. And what I had at that point of time, I had a lack of empathy. And I had to, first of all, I had to get self-aware of that. And then I had to find a way on how, empathy is nothing where you read a book and then you know how it works.
Yeah,
it's about, basically it's about doing it. And you need a trusted group around you, because what I had to also learn is to open up and say, I recognize I'm not the most emphatic person and I need more feedback. So I asked a close group around me to provide me feedback in situations where I was showing up as the, rigid, not emphatic Jenny from Germany. And so I got that feedback. So it was a lot about trying, failing, feedback, trying again, failing. And I feel like I'm still absolutely in that loop. That I think the biggest learning was about that self-awareness, knowing I have to do something and I need support. I cannot do it on my own. I need to do the work, yes. But I think this feedback is a very essential and crucial part of it.
Well, there are a couple of takeaways from what you just said. And the first one is that you were brave in understanding, not just understanding you were lacking empathy at the moment, but also to admitting to yourself and telling others, asking for help to others. And I guess some people might be too proud and to recognize their blind spots or weaknesses. I always find people like you that instead they take charge of their lives and they decide to be better. As you say, you are a lifetime learner. As Brian, there was a previous guest in one of my episodes. I know you know Brian. And it takes well, it takes as I say, bravery, courage. You need to get there. And the second thing is that you have realized that you couldn't do it alone. You needed the support of someone else in the form of a feedback. And of course, asking for feedback is not just asking for letting people talk, but also listening to them and what they say, even if it might not be something that you like, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, what was the hardest thing that you've ever heard in these feedbacks about yourself?
I think, to be honest, it was a very, very memorable moment. So I had at that point in time, I had not only one boss because it wasn't a matrix organization. So I had a couple of bosses around the globe. And and I think there is also something about in that combination. So I had one boss, he was British, and he called me. And I think if a British person is angry, that means a lot, right? Because I think British people are just the kindest also in the way they pick very concise communication. And so imagine I could tell by the tone that he was angry or frustrated. I don't want to read too much into the emotion, but it was not on the positive side. And he calls me and said, like, Jenny, you're really lacking empathy. And I'm really at a point where I cannot stand it anymore.
Ooh.
So that coming from, a British minded person, that was a really deep knife, right? That was sitting with me for a couple of days, and maybe even weeks, because I really had to digest that, and I couldn't unpack that in that moment, right? And it took me, I really forgot how long, that because I had to call him back and I had to ask questions to better understand, and not asking question in like, oh, I'm in denial or something. So I really took time thinking about that, but it still was not making sense for me. So I had to go back and unpack that a little bit more. And so yeah, that was a very memorable moment for me. And it was also like, it was at that time, right? There was no Zoom. There was not this like what we have right now, that I can see you. I can maybe read a little bit of your emotion. That was just really over phone. That was really a shock to Jenny's system.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, and it's harder. It's not impossible, but it's harder, as you say, to really understand the emotion of a person through the phone, through in a conversation that is only audio. Once again, there are a couple of things I want to unpack here, and the first one is the vulnerability that you show. That it's not just finding the weakness, the blind spot, but it's also the most important part is taking an action to do something about it. It's leading with vulnerability. And even the second phone conversation here, your boss, when you asked more information about what he said earlier, a few days earlier, that's the first action. It's like, okay, I am probably lacking empathy. I need to do something about it. I'm not happy, and I want to do something about it. I mean, Jenny, honestly, I really admire what you've done in this, and it takes a lot, and actually brought you to be a successful leader and a successful CFO, and it's not just you're a successful CFO, you are a foreign. I mean, you're not American, or you're German born. So you moved away from your country, and as you say, you changed culture and find yourself in a different environment. And probably you find yourself in companies like probably the one you're working in now, that are mainly masculine, I would say. And still, you're there, you're standing, and with your shoulders straight and everything, and you have success. What does it take? What does it take to be there, to get there?
I think about two words are immediately popping into my mind. I think it takes a lot of being curious, have the curiosity. Because I think that is, well, if you move to different countries, different cultures, and I think nowadays you don't have to really move literally, because when you work in a global environment, it starts already like with being curious about your coworker over Zoom who sits maybe in Brazil or in Sweden or in Australia, right? And the second one, which is coming to my mind, and some people may have a reaction to that, but I would say you need to be fearless.
Fearless.
Yes.
You are fearless.
Yes, I had to accept that
Yeah.
attribute to me at some point in time, because people were, taking me as an example for, or you just, we really like you, the fearless Jenny. I actually had it the first time when somebody approached me that way, or I heard people, attributing that to me. I was a little bit like, is that something positive, right? So I had a couple of conversations about that, but I think in my world, I would say yes. I'm here today because I was fearless, and I got encouraged to stay there as well, and not holding back. I definitely learned in my 20 years plus how I better communicate when I speak up, when I challenging people around me, when I want to get connected with people about different perspective and connections, which when I was the less empathetic person, that you can imagine that went very often wrong, because what people do, we are all human beings, go in the defensive mode, while that was not my intention. That comes back to how concise and also emphatic you communicate. And then asking the questions where you really want to connect about the topic and the different perspective, is on how. But I would say still this ingredient, being fearless, and not shying away from crucial conversations and showing here and there radical candor. It means also a lot of energy, and it means sometimes that conversation maybe go not as expected, and then you have to also have that courage and say, I think we need to take a break, and then have to reconnect, and just that, right? I think that's where I also felt fear. Can I say that? Like, okay, we both are now we are very engaged on that topic. And when you're engaged, it could be that there's also emotions coming in, right?
Yeah.
And how do you break that it's still a good targeted conversation? And then I shied away in my early days to say, I think we need just a few minutes, break. But I have to say, once I did it once, I think that I discovered the magic of that, because you give people, everyone, on all sides, even on my side, a moment to breathe, right? And think. And then and that's the magic. If you then continue, you will see that you get to that, getting that 360 per, I think that's what I'm always aiming for, getting that 360 perspective. And that is so difficult, right? I mean, imagine we would sit across the table and I just put the world globe into the middle, right? And I just start describing what I see. You can't see that on the other side, right?
No,
And then you would describe me what you see, and that would be different, and how you can make sure that we're still looking at the world at the same time.
And you think that you see it all. I mean, you think
Yeah.
you know it. I know
Yes.
because I know what
Yeah.
I'm seeing.
Yeah. and this is not something new, right? I still remember where I picked up this example, right? Imagine you're sitting in a, in a U-shaped form, and in the middle there is, I mean, at that time it was a soccer ball, because obviously I'm, grew up in Germany, and it's all about soccer. But yeah, it was my teacher in my 11th grade who actually, explained that concept to us, and that was another one which I find and actually always found very useful to get applied, right? When you have conversation, just thinking oh, I'm looking at Latin America and Stefano is looking at Australia. Okay, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I see that you've been here long enough to call it soccer instead of football.
I know.
Talking about self-awareness, Jenny, I wonder if there is something that for which you're still struggling a little bit. Something that you're trying to achieve, but it's still a little bit of struggle for you, a challenge.
Active listening is one of I have a little posted, a secret posted, but I have it, which I have to, unclick a little bit to say, you need to put attention to active listening to continue improving that skill set. And I think for me, the reason is I'm always on the go, very result driven. And by that, I'm moving too fast, and I may miss out what people actually want to really communicate. And the other shortfall is when you don't do active listening, people may perceive that as being disrespectful because they are not feeling heard, right? So it's something I daily have to watch. It's I always call it, I work now in the mining industry where it's all about safety, and I admire my company for that, because every meeting starts with a safety share. Can you imagine that? Every meeting, even if the finance people are having a meeting, we start with a finance share. And for me, internally, I always Jenny, put your attention to active listen.
Absolutely. And yesterday I was in a meeting with a local community, and I was talking to this lady, and she was clearly thinking about something else. And I could see her eyes moving, searching for something. Probably she was bored to death, and she was looking forward to go away. So at some point I told her something that was absolutely unrelated. It was something like, and there is a monkey jumping on the tree. And she didn't listen. She didn't comment that. And actually, that's one of the reasons why active listening is not just catching the content and someone can fool you, but it's really giving to the people what they deserve. That is your time, your attention, your focus. And you say that curiosity is also being curious about what they say. Just sometimes we stop listening the moment they say something, and we are caught away, in a word, and we start thinking about something related, or we think about the next question we're gonna ask, or we think about a comment, a judgment, and we are taken away from it. And we basically, is like our brain multitasking it does not exist. So our brain is committed to something else.
Yeah.
And I'm with you, because it's something that, for coaching, I had to learn, to master in a way. It's not like I'm a master of active listening, but I do my best. I know that there is no coaching without listening, so it's all about it. So yeah, I know how hard it can be. How much it gives if you are good at it.
Huh?
Well, let me ask you. Still talking about transitioning from a country to another, changing culture. What are the challenges that you have faced as not just in a workplace, but also simply living in a different place?
Personal growth a lot.
There you go.
And I mean, I lived in China, I worked in Asia Pacific,
Oh,
right? And so with that, I was traveling a lot in that region, and there, you always have to be adaptable in a way. And you will run into tiny little obstacles, um, which which was for me like to really train the muscle to say, yes, I will go through this, I will jump through this loop as well. And I will jump through this loop as well. And I think that goes back to the confirmation, yes, I am a continuous learner, right? It starts with little things.
right.
And always approach it with the positive mindset to that, because at the very beginning, okay, I blame it off being German, right? And there were things in China, very day to day, tiny little things, and I got really frustrated about that, right? Really. Why can they not just do it that way? Why, and and I had to realize this, I have control about that. It's my choice to get frustrated about that, right? And lose my energy. And I tell the funny story about that, right? So we had a water dispenser, and the water dispenser was broken, right? So you call a service hotline and say, and again, my Mandarin at that point in time was underdeveloped. That was at the very beginning, right? I could say, only a few words, but I couldn't speak a full sentence. And I could not explain in Mandarin, our water dispenser is broken. Can you please send somebody, right? So, and the person on the other side just heard water and knew there is a Laubai, like a foreigner on the phone, and said, yes, yes, I know, Nestle you want. And I'm like, no, I don't want Nestle. The water dispenser is broken, is leaking. I tried to explain in also my second language in different words what I really need, right? And today I'm smiling about that, but I know in that moment I was totally frustrated. I'm like, this can't be so difficult, right? All I actually need is just exchange maybe the water dispenser. And it went on and went on. And that those moments were for me important to realize this is a lot on me, how I react to that, right? Because if you in those moments then just get angry, they will even less understand what you're trying to say. So in just having that self-awareness that it's me, I have a choice. Do I engage on the frustration, or do I engage in like, this would be a funny, interesting path. Will I ever get my water dispenser repaired?
That's very important what you say, that how we react to things. I mean, things happen without us controlling.
Yeah.
Things happen to us, and it's as you say, it's all the matters is how you react to it. How First of all is understanding that you don't control anything. You control just a little bit, and then the second is that you have to learn and move forward. So the water is not just a water dispenser, I guess. It's much more than that.
Yeah.
But moving forward, and maybe you can find new opportunities in the new situation, something that it was not expected. And now you can learn how to change, how to repair the water dispenser alone.
Yeah.
You have a new skill that you can put in your toolbox.
Yeah. And for me, very high level, I think I had a much more fixed mindset when I first moved. And I have to say, thanks for the experience. I got way more flexible. And I think it has also to do with the mindset, right? If in Germany somebody gives you a no, it's a hard-coded no. It's yeah, it's either yes or no, maybe a maybe, but a no is a no. In China, I think the no is very often invitation to negotiation.
Those are
And they have a saying, right? I don't know if I get it right. So everyone who probably comes from that culture would say, "Oh, she is referring in the wrong way to that." But they talk about you have a river, and you throw a big rock into the river bed, right? But what is what the water will do? The water can go over the stone or the rock. It can go around, and it can even may go underneath, right? And I think just having that learned to create that in my own mindset, it's just, I mean, that's just a beautiful description, but that's how I every day, and people in my position know there's every day a new problem. There's almost every 5 minutes a new problem. And do you want to really every time react like the world is coming to an end? No, it's just like somebody is throwing another rock into the riverbed. And the water will go around over it beneath. So there will be a solution to it.
There will be a solution. There will be more than a solution, actually. My wife used to say that there are always 3 solutions for any problem. The one solution might be not acting at all, but there are always 3 solutions. Well, you mentioned something where you in this where you were telling the story about the know how no is an invitation in China, and those are cultural nuances that are so human, are so difficult to catch. And that's one of the things where I've been talking a lot about artificial intelligence and the impact on leadership, and actually catching those cultural nuances, especially when you work in a multinational environment in a company that has offices all around the world, or it's like you traveling around the globe. It's something that it's only a human being can catch, along with these feelings, this empathy that you can establish. But it was something that popped up in my mind when you really pointed out something very important about your experience. Okay, but changing a little bit, moving a little bit. I really wonder, Jenny, if you are fearless, you're brave, I know the thing, you're curious, you're a learner, and so on and so forth. Is there any role model that you have, any person that inspires you to be this, or is something that you have learned with experience and life?
My eyes go a little bit out because I'm like, I don't have a specific person as a role model. I think I have a lot of people I had the opportunity to work with where I have certain things I picked up from them, where I'm like, wow, this is really incredible, great. But I don't have this one perfect role model. It's one, unfortunately, we work now in different companies, but I had always like his communication was always so calm and so concise and still engaging, right? He never had this. He was a sector CFO, and he never had this like in any shape or form that you felt like, oh, he is the big boss, right? Or he's maybe talking down. He was always immediately asking, what are your thoughts, right? And I found that was something I really admired, but just seeing it in action and how it affected me, how it affected his team, and I was not even his, direct employee. That's, for example, people will say that is something what I really admired and have as a goal for me to be also perceived that way. And then there were leaders who actually asked for feedback. I think that is a role model as well. And you mentioned, like, yes, 100%. I always worked in a male-dominated environment, and I would say you either like it or you don't like it. So, and yeah, I do like it. But I think it also comes with that I'm not, holding back. I approach people. I make an effort also to meet them where they are. And so with that, there have been people who also were big allies for me, right? If I think back 20 years plus, where the world was a little different than we are today. So we have made big progress when it comes to, gender equality, just to name one.
Yeah.
And, I had so many great people around me who were encouraging me to use my voice, to share my thoughts. And, I could say his first name, Helmut, is still for me in that regard a role model. Because he keep, encouraging me pushing myself. And I think that's an attribute in my perspective, leader should have a strong focus in helping others to get better and being seen.
Well, that's important. My role model was at least when I was in the Navy, was he was the captain of the ship where I was on, and the man was so good in creating a team and really making feel people empowered and trusting them. And even when we found ourselves in kind of critical situations, he was not like this kind of person who would jump in and give directions. No, he was there observing how you would react to the situation, and you knew that he was there ready to help, right? But it was not controlling it. He was stepping back and observing and looking at you or looking at the team. And this gives you really the sense of, I can do it. I'm not a bad, and it's not only that, it's like, wow. And then he trusts me. And of course you trust him back, right? Because trust can be bi-directional. It's not just one way. Hardly can be only one way, of course. Well, I was thinking now while I was talking, the question. Actually, no, that was the question, because we often talk about role models and how good his boss was, but what about the bad boss? What about the guy the person that you have hated working with? Is there any experience you can?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that comes with life, right? I mean, I think we would be not honest and transparent to ourselves, and we would say, yeah, in my entire professional life, I never had a bad boss. But even there, I would say you can learn something from those people as well. Absolutely. Many years back, and I can tell this because we had multiple conversation afterwards, over years. But I made a big mistake. I was once, an FP&A person pulling budgets together, and I had a pretty big miss in my forecast. So today I smile about that, right? And I get called in his office, and he was a business segment CFO, and he got, you have to imagine a man. He was tall. He was really angry, and so he was yelling at me, right? And I was scared in that moment. I'm like, okay, I'm getting fired here, right? And going out. I mean, hindsight, what happened? Somebody called me and said, like, oh, I know what happened. You want to come work for me? And I said, yes, I want. So I went out of the situation. However, I would say, and that's come where I would still say he was a role model for me. So he realized that his reaction was not appropriate, right? Yelling at a 25-year-old employee and is not the right appropriate reaction, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the type of feedback you give somebody to make a person better.
I
So
mean,
that he,
I think that sorry to interrupt, but I think the yelling to anyone is wrong. It's not just
is
25 years old.
absolutely, it's
And
absolutely,
I something that I've done, I regret when I did it. I absolutely did.
yeah. And I think, so this is the point. He did as well. And again, you have to imagine he was, you could say, multiple levels up. And when it was clear that I'm leaving and going somewhere else within the company, right? We went for dinner and we talked about that, and he shared that was wrong. I apologize for that. And I think that makes that bad leader still for me a role model in a way. And so, every bad has something good as well. But one thing I would say, if you find yourself in a toxic work environment, get out.
Yeah, get out. Well, sometimes it's not easy, but
I
yes,
know,
get
I know,
right.
but
I totally agree. I totally agree. I totally agree. I find myself in a really in a moment in which my boss was wrong and his boss was worse, and the boss of his boss was even worse. So it was really these aligned planets in the wrong direction though, but I couldn't get away. I tried. I tried to pull all my strings and I couldn't get away.
yeah.
And for 2 years, I had to really minimize whatever I was doing, just doing my job. Well,
Yeah, but that's also hard, right?
yeah,
There's a term. It's you're ghosting your job basically,
yes, right. It's
which
quite
is
clear.
difficult. It's
It's quite
difficult
clear. Yeah.
because
It's like,
when you're a leader, you want to drive, you want to get result, you want to change, and then you have to start ghosting your job. It's the hardest part to do.
and you have passion for it, right?
Yeah,
The passion is not like it's gone away. You still have passion for the job because that's what you love. But of
yes,
course, there
yeah,
is a lot going on, and this passion is really not. You cannot feel it that much
yeah,
anymore. As you say, changing. And actually, as soon as he left, the environment changed completely. It was
yeah,
much better, but it
yeah,
was time for me to leave. So I could not
yeah,
enjoy the new boss.
yeah.
Well, I know we don't have much time left, so let me ask you the final question, Jenny. That is, what is the suggestion you would give to someone that comes to you and asks for recommendation to be a successful leader like you are?
I really think it starts really knowing what is your passion for, what you want to do. And then I think I go back to, I mean, okay, I always, I'm a bit selfish here, right? If I work in finance, I want to see people being curious about everything, right? And asking 5 times the why. And so I think for me that would be the advice, like find yourself like about what you're curious about, and then see that matches your professional um selection of what is the job, because it could be that you're just in the wrong job, right? That doesn't match what you want to be. And the other part, I would call it the adaptability, because we are living in a world, no matter what job you probably will pick, in which country, in which industry, change is always around us. And again, that comes to that, be also self-aware, and then pick if you want to be on the on your happy channel or on the frustrational channel, right? And you are the master of that controller, right? Because that's what you can that's the piece you can control. and make the right choice, what feels good for you. If you want to be frustrated, that's your decision. But be aware of that, I think, is the third crucial part for being successful in what you like to do.
And don't fear to get wrong, to be wrong, even if you think you've done the best choice. I mean, it's there is still.
Oh yeah, I think you really need to celebrate when you do something wrong.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think we are missing that very often, and I just had it the other day with my team. I think I have a new team. I'm new leader too, and I think they still need to. No, they obviously we still need to get to know each other. But I came after that meeting and said, like, wasn't this a great failure? This was absolutely not great. And
but it changes perspective. The moment you say, "Oh, it was a great failure," the people,
right? Yeah, and kind of like so. And there's so much we can learn from that, right? And I think I brought it also back with the excitement, right? And not like, oh, this was a terrible meeting and this is not acceptable, right? And you have to change, right? No, this was like, let's acknowledge what happened and then say like, what can we do? Right? That's also always important. It's always a team. What can we do to do it just next time better? And I could tell that people had, you could tell by faces they were not happy coming out of that meeting room, going to our, corner. And I could tell that the body language changes. But I think I did that to some degree intentional, but it was to a much larger degree, it was me. That was my authentic me saying like, yes, things happen, wasn't perfect.
And that's okay.
Great job for failing. Let's go again.
Well, that's very inspiring, Jenny, and thank you for sharing everything with us. I'm taking away a lot of things even today, starting from the F.E.L.T. yeah, right. I love that, and I might take it with me. I will always say that it's you. Well, thank you again for having me with us and for sharing your experiences, your struggles, your vulnerabilities. And it's always nice to hear people being so open and about everything. Thank you.
Thanks, Stefano, for having me. This was a great conversation, also like our first one, which we should have also called, I think. But yeah. And with that, thanks. And since the holiday season is coming up, wish you an enjoyable holiday season with your family and friends.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you.